Hello everyone and welcome to this Google Digital Garage training session on building engaging presentations. My name is Alison. I'm a trainer for Google's free skills training program, the Google Digital Garage. Just a bit about myself. I am an experienced digital marketing specialist and trainer. I have a background in e-commerce and B2B business. I also deliver quite a number of presentations as part of my training and event work. And I've worked in digital for around about 17 years, so quite a while now. I would also like to introduce our moderator today, Nar. Nar is also a Google Digital Garage coach and will be interacting with you and answering some of your questions on the instant chat to the right there. So you can identify Nar by their name as well as a little blue spanner that you should see next to their name in the chat. So just before we get started, I want to call out a few things to help you today. If you're having any trouble viewing the webinar right now, please try refreshing your page. Often switching it off and switching it back on again does the trick. If you would like to join in the instant chat today, and we sincerely hope you do, you will need a YouTube account, which you can very easily set up by clicking in the box on the right there. If you just go away and do that right now, you should only take about a minute, and then you'll be ready to join in the chat as soon as I get started. I will pause through the session to answer any more complex questions from the chat box. Nar has only got a limited number of characters available to answer questions. So if Nar feels that everyone might benefit from hearing the answer or hasn't got quite enough space to reply, they'll be sharing questions with me to answer during the question break. Also, just want to let you know that we're running this Google Digital Garage virtual training as part of a much broader offering of courses. So do check out the schedule of up and coming webinar training in the description below. There's a link that will take you through to the website. And I'm sure now I'll be sharing a link to the Google Digital Garage with you as well. Lots joining us today, so thank you so much for being here live. Just a few hellos. Oh goodness, I won't get through all of them, but hello, Angela from Ohio. Hello, Yesenia from Texas. Hello, Joe near Oxford. Gregory in Athens. Jessica, Nadia, Susanna, Aditi. Hello, everybody. Say hi in the chat. Say hi to Nar. Do put your questions and any observations, any comments that you have during this session, pop them in the chat. We're live, we like to interact, we like the sessions to be as engaging as possible. So today we are going to look at how to craft your approach to presentations. So be familiar with the uses of presentations to achieve a desired effect. Then we're going to look at where do you start to create a presentation from scratch? How do you create effective presentations? And then finally, we're going to cover some basic essential presentation skills, which will give you the confidence to present in front of an audience. Well, let's get started. But before we do, I want to highlight the free career certificates available from Google. Google career certificates are available for job seekers based in the UK. The link is goo.gle/career search UK. I'm sure Nar will share that with you. Obviously, we hope you find today's webinar helpful, but these free flexible online training programs are designed to help you earn job-ready skills in high-growth, high-demand careers such as IT support, project management, data analytics, UX design, and digital marketing. You don't need any relevant experience, you don't need a degree, but if you're in the UK, you can access these career certificates via free scholarships through our selected partners. So do check out the link where you can sign up and get yourselves upskilled with some really in-demand skills that job seekers, that employers are looking for today. Back to presentations. So what do we mean when we talk about presentations? What's the most memorable presentation you've experienced? Have you got any experiences you can share in the chat? What's the best presentation you've ever witnessed? Maybe it's the worst presentation you've ever witnessed. So what's the most memorable presentation you've experienced? For me, just at the end of last year, I went to see a comedian in Newcastle, near where I live, called Dave Gorman, who gave a really engaging 2-hour show. It's just him on a stage presenting, and stand-up comedians are actually amazing presenters. well, good stand-up comedians, ones that make you laugh, they have to have the presence on the stage and hold an audience's attention for quite a period of time. His presentation was incredibly engaging because he told a story as he went through, everything linked together, elements he brought up at the start of the show, he referenced back at the end, and it all was tied up very neatly and nicely and made me laugh throughout the whole occasion. Poor presentation, I would say, back in my university days when I went to one of those lectures where I struggled to keep my eyes open in the middle of the afternoon because the man was talking with a very monotone voice and wasn't engaging at all, and I was struggling to keep my attention. So think to your own experiences, any memorable presentations. So Salwa, thank you for sharing. Your ex-property director presenting the annual report and forecast. It was captivating and so engaging. Amazing. Not something, an annual report and forecast, that you would be preparing yourself to have an engaging, captivating presentation, I'm sure. And Rewa, apologies if I mispronounce your names. I do my best. The presentation you remember by heart was a presentation about self-awareness. Excellent. Great. Thank you for sharing. So as we go through, just have a think, if you haven't already, about any presentations you've seen that you can remember. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. If I haven't got round to you, I do appreciate your input. So why do we present? Presentations are used to support the story the speaker is telling by using images, text, and potentially video and audio. Chances are your career can depend on how you speak, write, and think in that order. Nobody knows what you're thinking until you speak or write. We have to communicate. And these days, people tend to have a short attention span for reading. Thank you, social media, for that. But our attention spans are reduced these days. So in a presentation, if you can move the minds of others, they can see in you the ability to get things done. They can see in your language and expression how you communicate. Can you inform people? Can you inspire people, instruct people, entertain people, persuade people? Presenting is how we can do this effectively. So I'm just going to play a short video from Nilofer Merchant. This is suggesting a small idea that might have a big impact on your life and health. So I'm going to play this, and I want you to think about, what type of presentation is this? What did you take away from the presentation? How effective do you think the presenter is?
What you're doing right now at this very moment is killing you. More than cars or the internet, or even that little mobile device we keep talking about, the technology you're using the most almost every day is this, your tush. Nowadays, people are sitting 9.3 hours a day, which is more than we're sleeping at 7.7 hours. Sitting is so incredibly prevalent, we don't even question how much we're doing it. And because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't even occur to us that it's not okay. So instead of going to coffee meetings or fluorescent lit conference room meetings, I ask people to go on a walking meeting to the tune of 20 to 30 miles a week. It's changed my life. You'll be surprised at how fresh air drives fresh thinking, and in the way that you do, you'll bring into your life an entirely new set of ideas. Thank you.
I don't know about you, but whenever I see that, I feel the need to stand up. So that's an example of it's a very small snippet from a TED talk from Nilofer Merchant, who suggests that this small idea, standing up, having a meeting, making it into a walking meeting, could have an impact on your life and your health. So do share in the chat what you think about that presentation. What TED Talk presenters do really well is have a very clear and thought out approach to what they're presenting. They know their topic inside out, and they know the message they want to convey to the audience. And the way they often do this is by telling a story. Stories are the secret ingredient of presentations that make a difference in the world and also achieve the desired results that inspired the presentation in the first place. Stories are far more interesting to us than facts, because stories entertain us, stories engage us. So you've got a presentation to give. Can you organise your facts so that they follow a simple narrative? Keep each slide to one key idea, or depending on the content, build key ideas incrementally so it's easy to follow. Stories have a structure. We're taking audiences on a journey. The simple rule of having a beginning, where we're setting up what we're presenting and the message we want to convey, a middle, where the audience is going on a journey of discovery with you, and an ending where you tie everything together and reveal any final insights. We're told stories from when we're very small children, and we love stories as adults. Even if we watch a film, read a book, watch a TV show, we love stories, we engage with stories. So let's not think about it as delivering a presentation. Let's think about it as telling a story. Thank you for all your input coming in. I can see Susanna says as a scientist that sadly, she still has to attend some very poor presentations. The content might be good, but they're not engaging the audience. Exactly. Jodie, anything from Nigel Botterill from Entrepreneurs Circle is always memorable. Ah, nice shout. Thanks, Jodie. I'll check that out. And yeah, feedback on Nilofer Merchant's video, great talk, very true. Yeah, exactly. That simple idea that we're sitting on our bottoms too much. Mariam, it was very engaging, good body language. We'll come to that later. And Susanna, great storytelling. Exactly what we're talking about, storytelling here. Thank you, everyone. So we've got here some basic story types that you might be able to use if you're giving a presentation. So 4 basic types here. First of all, we have an origin story. Now, many great inventions have an origin story. They focus on perhaps dire circumstances the narrator has lived through, struggle maybe, or hardship, loss of job, something like that. That since we've come from this point, this was how we started, and then leads through to where they are now. Future vision is the opposite of the origin story. This is what could be a presentation about the future, the vision, what you're looking to do. Failure or success stories, these are essentially saying this happened, we failed, but we learned, and this led to success. And then realization stories. This is all about having had a problem, maybe you were stuck with something, and then having that eureka moment. I realized at that moment, this is what I needed to do. So here we have some examples of how origin, future vision, failure or success or realization stories can be basic story types, can be used in your presentation, whatever it might be that you're talking about. And in the TED Talk that was used there, that was a realization story. So using story types, these are 3 typical presentations you might give at work and the types of stories you might want to tell to make these more interesting to your audience. So we've got a budget report. So similar actually to maybe what Salwa was saying about the annual report or a forecast. We have a budget report. You could maybe use a success or failure story and focus on what you learned and how you moved forward. For a company update, you might use an origin story, might be interesting, maybe for new people so they understand how your business got to where you are and what the significance is of things that are happening now. For an idea pitch, this might be a vision, future vision story, what the future would look like if your idea works, or perhaps a realization story. So one of these pitches for business, we realized there was a need for this, and so that we created this, our business became this. So different types of story types can fit with different types of presentations, messages that you want to give. So Ashanafi, how do we tell stories? Any tips and tricks? Well, we will go through a bit about the stories now, and I will come back to your question in the break. But essentially, look at these 4 main types and think what would naturally fit with the message I'm trying to give. It's just to give you a basic framework. The main thing with telling a story is the narrative, though, making sure you've got a structure where you know this is my beginning, this is my introduction, capture their attention, then have the meat of it in the middle, and then at the end tie everything up so at the end they think, oh, that was very neat. Like when I went to see the comedian, he threw in little taster bits throughout, which all came to make sense at the end in this story. Everything fitted together. Now, no one's impressed by a rambling presentation. That's why it's important we have the structure. So before you start building a presentation, there's lots of things to consider, and perhaps most important, to work out what you want to achieve. There must be a reason you're presenting. After you've given your presentation, what do you want your participants, your viewers, the people there to do? What action do we want them to take? What do you want them to think? So structure your presentation in a way that people can follow easily. People go to presentations or watch presentations to obtain information, but how do you want to influence your audience? What thoughts do you want them to take away besides facts? What moments in your story can you get them to really think about a topic or facts you're explaining and how to bring these insights, and try and highlight these and integrate them in your presentation? And you can influence the way people feel when listening to your presentation, especially if you build a rapport. So humour could be employed to lighten the tone of a subject and invite audiences to relax and be more open to your message. Another technique is to personalise the narrative so your audiences can empathise with you. So use your personal stories to highlight certain important ideas. Building connection with people that you're presenting to can make dry topics more engaging. When you're face to face, the simplest way to do this is making eye contact with the audience and inviting them to participate. When online, like we are today, use chat like we've got today to call participants out by name so they know that their contributions are being noted. You might want them to take away one key idea from the whole presentation, or maybe one thing from each section. Remember, with the best will in the world, people are going to forget much of your content. So refer back to your primary goal, what you want to achieve, and don't tell them lots of things they don't need to know. So remember that TED talk? It was really clear the presenter wanted us to take away one thing, which is the need to be more active in our day-to-day lives. So how does this all come together? Essentially, it gives your presentation structure and flow. By giving your presentation a beginning, middle, and an end, as we mentioned with the stories, we can give ourselves a flow. So we can say, right, this is our beginning. So we need to do our research. Research your presentation. What are the relevant points? Your outline is simply a list of your main points and sub-points of your presentation. How are you going to introduce it at the beginning? Then you're going to be looking at planning the actual structure of the presentation. How can you create a compelling hook? How can you keep people engaged after the initial introduction? How can you do that? Now, there are ways. People are asking you, how do we do stories and things? There are ways of grabbing people's attention and keeping them engaged. So using a provocative statement, if it's applicable to you or appropriate, asking a rhetorical question, shock or surprise your audience. So capture their attention. They're going to keep watching, keep listening. Bring up a problem and share the solution. Maybe tell a brief story or an anecdote. Oh, this happened to me. Can you relate to this? Those kind of questions. And then we need to design our presentation, because nothing's going to distract an audience more than a poorly designed presentation. So we will go through a bit about slides, but certainly you don't want distracting slides. Slides should actually just be a support for what you're saying. You should never be reading off a slide. It should just be a visual aid to help communicate and reinforce your message. So it's not just about telling a story. It's about telling a story for your audience. Who are you talking to? What matters to them? What's going to engage them? What's going to resonate with them? What's going to empathize with them? Who are your audience? Now, we won't do this now because we're online, but ideally over the next few days, practice telling a story to someone about something that inspires you, just for 3 minutes. If you don't have anyone to do it to at home, record yourself on your phone or tell it to the dog. But 3 minutes, tell a story. Think about the idea that you need to present, and then see if you could do that as an origin story. And then try again, would it work as a future vision story, or a success failure story, or a realization story? So you can tell the same story using one or other of those story types. It will come across in a slightly different way. Okay, have a brief pause for questions. Let's have a look. What have we got? So Ashanafi's asked, how do we tell stories? Any tips and tricks? So think about, often it's good to be able to relate what you're talking about to a real life situation. If you've got very dry facts and figures or a difficult, complicated concept to explain, can you put that into a way, communicate that in a way that people will relate to in their everyday lives? And then can you think about a narrative? So this happened, then we did this resulted in this. So think about everything as having a beginning, middle, and an end. And if we can just say, put it into a story, just as you would be reading a story to a kid or making up a story when we wrote stories when we were children, can you communicate these ideas in the same sort of way that captures people's imagination? And you'll see this in documentaries as well. They'll be communicating facts, but they will introduce us to what they're going to be talking about and then bring in interesting personal anecdotes and individual stories from people as they go through. Definitely take a look at some TED Talks because they're really good for inspiration on how to deliver this content. And it is a skill, it's something you need to practice. It's not a natural exercise for many of us. So don't be too hard on yourself if you haven't done it before. Kumar, how many story types in the presentation? So we would suggest you choose one of the story types and carry that theme through the presentation. But you could introduce other elements if you were feeling creative and clever, but the main thing is that we're engaging people, we're capturing their attention. They want to carry on listening because they want to find out what happens, just like we want to carry on watching a box set and watch the next episode because what happens, that's what we want to do. What are they going to say? What is their solution? What is their bright idea? Okay, keep the questions coming in, and I do have another break halfway through, so keep them coming in and now I'll pass them across to me. We're moving on to the next section, which is about building effective presentations. So remember, before you stand up and deliver a presentation, it's essential you do your research, structure your thoughts. So in this section, we're going to look at some of the tools you can use to tell your story in an effective way. So before you launch into designing a presentation, think about your audience. So who are we talking to? What message are we trying to convey to them? How can you make it as easy as possible for them to understand what you want them to know? So think about who they are, but also how many people you need to present to. So job interviews are presentations essentially, and you often have to give presentations in job interviews. And that might be one person that you're presenting to. It could be a small panel of people. For a business meeting or a sales pitch, you might have 10, 15 people. If you're presenting at a conference, you might have 100 or 1,000 people in front of you. And if you're on the internet, the sky's the limit. So think about how large your audience is and who they are. Now, when it comes to the message you're trying to convey, do they all need the same information? How do you keep different people engaged throughout? Maybe you're giving a presentation which, some people are interested in the first bit of delivery that you're going to give, the first set of results. Some people are only interested in the other set of results. How are you going to keep everybody engaged? Think about, if you're in real life, not virtual, engaging more of the senses when presenting. Can you give them something to look at? Can you give them something to read? Can you give them something to listen to? Can you give them something to do even? So what tools as well is important? What tools do you need to deliver your chosen presentation? If you have slides, make sure that you have access to a projector or to laptop connection to a screen at the venue. Do you have the right cables with you for your laptop? If not, make sure you carry an adapter. I do real life presentations and I carry around a little bag with all different cables and connections in because I never know what I'm going to get when I arrive. Got my laptop. Make sure you've got all the equipment and technology at your fingertips so that you're not having to worry about things working when you turn up. If you are using an online meeting tool, think about how many people can attend, whether you can share your slides. Are you using something like YouTube like we are today, or Zoom or Teams? any of those virtual platforms, make sure you've practiced on them. There are webinar platforms you can use. Make sure you've done a dry run. So make sure you're aware and familiar with the tools and the technology that you're using. So you don't have to have slides. We have slides today, but you might choose to present without slides. They're not mandatory. We are going to review some of the other tools available and then have a look at some software, but you might decide not to have slides. That's fine. If you think about stand-up comedians, often just stood there on a stage, just them and a mic. You do have to make sure you're able to engage your audience if you take that approach, and that you are really clearly communicating your message. So there's more than one type of presentation aid. Today I'm using Google Slides. However, we've got some other tools here. I'm sure you've come across others as well that aren't on here. Lots of different presentation aids. Any aid that you choose should help you illustrate your points, not distract from you and your message. And they should also be as convenient for the audience to access as yourself. So whatever tool you use, make sure you know how to use it. Make sure you've practiced with it before the big day. And think about what you can use as backup if the main method fails, which does happen. Sometimes the tech lets us down on venues when in real life, and we have to think, right, what are we going to do? What's our backup plan? So we've got tools here such as Mural, Canva, free graphic design tool, which will enable you to create slides. Slido is a tool that you can integrate with your presentation and ask people in real life to they scan the QR code, they get taken to polls, they can share their answers and they appear on the screen. So it's a really nice interactive tool if you're doing real life presentations, or none at all. It's okay. You don't need to have these visual aids if they're not appropriate for your presentation. Many presentations, including online sessions like today, require you to build a presentation using tech, so using a computer, tablet, or even a mobile phone. So we're going to have a look at some of the different software available to help you. There's lots of presentation software and programs available. Some of the most popular ones are Google Slides, which I've got here. So we're using this today. Google Slides is a presentation editor in Google Docs and the Google Drive productivity suite. The presentations are kept in the cloud and associated with your Google account, so you can access them at any computer. You don't have to carry around a USB stick. You can just log in and they're there. And you can also collaborate with people in real time. So if multiple people are working on slides, you can all access them and make edits. And what's really good is that a revision history is kept, which means that you can access any past version of the presentation and keep a log of who made edits. And you can convert Google Slides to different formats such as PowerPoint or PDF, and you can edit PowerPoint presentations in Google Slides as well. So you have Google Slides, just one option. PowerPoint is another option as well. We're just going to cover Google Slides as I'm using that today. So if you've never used Google Slides, it's incredibly simple to use. You can customize how your presentation looks via themes. So when you first create a presentation, you can choose from pre-designed themes to give all your slides the same background and text styles, which give you a consistent look and feel, which is really important. And you can apply different themes to all of the slides. So if you choose a theme and apply it and then think, actually, do you know what? I'd like to try something else. You can do that at the click of a button. So you just choose from the themes over here on the right-hand side and it will apply to all your slides. The formatting is controlled by the theme, so you can get on with building your presentation. And we have a short video about how to use Google Slides. This is showing you how the menus work, just like a word processing, like a Google Doc or a Word doc. You can use custom themes, as we're showing here, to create your own look and feel. So you can incorporate your own colors, your own brand logos, and apply them to every slide in the presentation that you do. So if you're working for a business, for a brand, make sure you follow their brand guidelines if you have them. So if you're starting out, it's good to consider coming up with some simple rules to use for your identity. We have got a session called Writing for Social Media that goes into branding in more detail. But if I just play that briefly again, you will see here, Oh, there we go. You can see here at the top, we've got these sort of word processing type menus that will enable you to edit the slides as you go through and apply your own heading styles, your own text styles, whatever you want them to look like. Just remember though, just because you can make things look fancy doesn't mean you should. You don't want anything to distract from the message that you're giving. Okay. She says as she then distracts from the message. Just one moment. And if things go wrong in a presentation and you lose your slides like I am today, it's fine. You don't need to panic. We just find them again and everybody understands that mistakes can happen. Okie dokie, one moment. I think that's actually a really good thing to see that it can happen to anyone. Okie dokie. So make sure when you are doing your presentation, which should appear again in just a moment, ta-da! Make sure that you are using a title. The title's really important. The title's what get you hooked. So think back to the goal of your presentation. How can you use just a few words to tell people what they're going to get from your session? Whether the title of the presentation is listed in a conference program or an online directory, the job of the title is to excite and intrigue people so they want to attend. So just like the title of a book or a headline in a newspaper, what's going to get people to think, I need to go and see that. I need to listen to this presentation. What's going to excite them? What's going to get them intrigued? Especially for things like a webinar. Like we've been inundated with webinars, particularly since the pandemic. So what title is going to really draw people's attention and get them to want to engage online? When it comes to the slides themselves, use as little text as possible. So you can see the example on the left. There's a lot of words there. We don't really want people to be having to sit and read a lot of text. We want people to focus on what you're saying rather than concentrate on words on a screen. Also, consider that not all people watching are going to find reading easy for lots of different reasons. And if your goal is to be understood, you need to make it as easy as possible for everyone. So here, the example on the right, much clearer. We've got 3 key points on a slide. It says welcome, key points, whereas this one over here, oh, I've got a lot of reading to do. And it's not always easy, particularly if you're sitting in a conference room near the back, to see the slides that clearly. So don't use too much text. People often ask, how many slides should we use? How many? Well, there isn't a magic number because it depends on the content you're delivering. But it's a good idea not to add more slides than presentation minutes. So for a 60-minute presentation, don't have more than 60 slides. You want people to focus on what you're saying rather than reading, as I just said. So use bullet points to remind you or to reinforce key points. Don't be a script. Don't just read slides. No, and we can read slides ourselves. We don't want to stand listening to a presenter just reading slides. Think about the size of your text. Can it be read at the back? Are the characters clear? A plain font is much easier to read than a fancy font. And think about contrast. So a dark font on a light background is easiest. And as well as just text, can you use any images, any charts, any graphics to illustrate a point? Statistics can be a really good way of illustrating or emphasizing a point. So if you've got some good statistics, pop that up there on a slide. Make sure you've got the source to hand in case anyone asks you where you got the figure from. And keep it interesting by varying the pace of your slides. So sometimes you'll move quickly through a series of points, and at other times you'll dwell on a story. So sometimes go fast, sometimes go slow. Vary the pace to keep people's interest. So today we're running an online presentation. When you're delivering a remote session, it's really important to think about your audience, because I can't see your body language. I can't make eye contact to see how you're getting on. So it's really important that we go that extra mile to keep people engaged when we're running an online presentation. If you're going to build a slide deck, you'll need to choose the tool that can support screen sharing. Make sure you can share your screen. I've actually got 2 monitors to make things easier for me. So on one screen, I've got my document where I can see Na sharing questions with me. On the other, I've got my slides that I can see. So that can often make it a lot easier for you. But make sure that the tool you're using, whether it be Zoom, YouTube, whatever it might be, will support this screen sharing as well. Will you be able to see your participants? I can't see you, but sometimes we're using tools like Zoom where we can see people who are attending. So that's an important factor as well. Are you actually going to see your participants? The size of the audience is really important. So you might be presenting to one person on a video call. Okay, that's very different for a large group meeting or an audience like today. So think about how many people you're going to be talking to online. A larger session like this one is streamed. It means it has to run a bit like a TV broadcast. So we've got a presenter, we've got viewers, but we've also got the added benefit of chat, which enables you to get involved if you want them to. So think about that as well. Are you going to have live chat? If you are going to have live chat, have somebody with you. Na's with me today, supporting me with live chats, because I haven't got the time to keep looking at the chat and doing the presentation. So make sure you've got that support available as well. And also, you might need the help of a moderator if there's a delay between when your stream goes live on the internet and when you stream, because even a 60-second delay can create a really awkward silence. Also, think about the ease of use. So how easy is it for you to set up? I know there's some webinar tools I've used that you pay for, which can be really straightforward to set up. And then there's tools like OBS to enable you to live stream, which can involve a little bit more technical know-how. So depends on the tool you've got. How easy is it set up? How easy is it to use? How easy is it for your participants to join? And the cost, of course, as well. Okay, Rewa, question. While presenting, how do I handle challenging questions or someone might disapprove of what I'm saying? Hey, well, not everyone's going to agree with us all of the time. That's the variety and joy of life. But I understand it can be awkward and put you in a difficult position if you get asked a challenging question. We will come to that, but you know, it's okay to not know everything. And sometimes if you've got a question that you don't know the answer to, when that way I've dealt with that, and I'll often get asked lots of questions to do with tech that I don't know. And I can say, well, I don't have the answer for that for you right now, but I'll definitely make a note of it and come back to you after the session. Or I will go and find out, or catch up with me at the end and we'll go through it then. So don't feel you have to make something up. That would be the worst thing. Never make up an answer because you don't want to look like you don't know. It's okay to say, do you know what? I haven't got the answer for that at the moment, but that's certainly something that I'd like to look into. I'm interested to know myself. And in terms of disapproving of what you're saying, we can't make everybody agree with us. And sometimes we're delivering presentations which are things people don't want to hear. So yeah, I realize it can make you feel uncomfortable, but try not to take any reactions personally if you're giving a presentation, particularly to a large number of people. I often think just focus on maybe a few people at different stages of the audience, and catch maybe their eye contact so that you're moving your vision backwards and forwards, and you can tell the friendly faces. And I often just kind of focus on people who I feel a sort of connection with. And then if there's anyone who you can tell is disapproving, just don't even look that way. Don't even look that way. So let's move on to the final section, which is about boosting your presentation skills. So these are the skills that you need to have to deliver engaging, effective presentations to a variety of audiences. So we talked about structure, we've talked about story, we've talked about slides. But a successful presentation is about far more than that. It's about gestures, it's about your facial expression, your voice, your conviction. All of these elements must be right, because the audience is there to engage with you, not the slide deck. So what kind of presenter will you be? Once you've built your presentation, you've got your lovely slide deck there ready, you need to know how to deliver it. So do you remember at the beginning, and I asked you to think about those best and worst presentations? Well, usually the difference between the two is the person doing the talking. And some people believe that good, confident speakers have a natural gift. You either have it or you don't. But I believe, in fact, no, I know that presenting is a skill that can be learned just like any other. And I will bring in a personal anecdote here to say that 4 years ago, there is no way in this world you would have thought that I would be delivering a live online webinar on YouTube today. I was terrified of speaking in public. And now it's part of my job. I do this, I speak to people on stages, bigger audiences. And I would never have imagined I would have ever done that because I wasn't that kind of person that did presentations. I'm not a public speaker. That's for other people. It's not true. It's a skill that can be learned. And the great news is there's lots you can do right now to improve your presentation style. First of all, think about your audience. I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but it's really important. Who are the people you're talking to and how many people are you presenting to? Even if you've got hundreds of people in front of you, you can talk to them as if you're talking to one person. So the idea here is all those people in front of you, and it's terrifying. Think about, I'm talking to one person. And if what I say makes sense for one individual, it's going to make sense to many. Remember, crowds of people are really just lots of individuals. So let's talk to the individual. And think about the space you're presenting in, because this is different when you're presenting online. Even though the numbers can be bigger, I tend to treat it as if I'm delivering to just one person and talk to them directly. So I'm just talking to one of you out there and, oh yeah, my slides messed up earlier and hey, but it's fine because, you know, we're just all here, individuals talking to each other. It's exactly the same in a big room full of people. They're individuals, just one person, you're having a conversation. And on that note, having audience participation can be really helpful and a really good way of building that relationship. And there are do's and don'ts of interacting with the audience. But do interact with the audience, because no matter how small or large, there's always ways you can interact and keep people interested. So if you've got a large group of people in a theatre, for example, you could ask for a quick show of hands. So how many people in this room are watching The Last of Us, for example? You know, get people engaged, get them to feel like they're interacting. Or stand up if you like Beyonce. There's these kind of questions, things that are going to get people in large groups all able to interact. The medium groups, you can ask questions directly to individuals. Oh, where are you from? Or have you used Google Slides before? Or what did you think about this? Or what do you think about that TED Talk? You could split groups up into pairs and set them tasks and ask them to join in the presentation, sharing things they've learned. If you're in one-to-one groups, remember it's a conversation. So if you're talking to someone, can you ask them to carry out tasks you've been discussing? Can you ask them questions? If you're online, like today, can you enable the chat? Will you have a moderator? Will you build in breaks to check the chat? We've got these breaks for questions, so I can have a look, see what's coming across. Otherwise, you'd never get through them all in the session if I had to keep going back and looking at the chat for the questions. So there's nothing worse than a one-sided conversation. So ask your audience questions, get to know them, ask people to contribute, ask their thoughts about things, ask them to ask you questions. It will make the session more memorable for them. And it will also help you present the content that they want to know. So if you're answering questions they're interested in, they're going to take something away from your presentation that's really useful for them. Don't talk at them non-stop. Have you ever sat in a presentation where the presenter was racing to get to the end, didn't stop once, finished 15 minutes early? You feel a bit sort of stressed yourself in that situation, and you feel like you want them to finish because you know they want to finish. So don't just talk nonstop, take pauses, ask questions, ask for comments. All of that's really good for participation. Now, who did it? Rewa asked, how do I handle challenging questions? So here we've got about questions. So never panic over difficult questions. We like having questions. We want engagement. We're inviting questions in. Set up somewhere where you can keep track of questions that you can't answer. So even if you need to write it down, just a moment, I'll make a note of that and check after the session. It reassures the group or the person that their questions hasn't been forgotten. You don't want them to get to the end and, oh, do you think they'll remember the question I asked they were going to look up? So you can say, I'll just make a note of that and we'll check the answer after the session. This sets the expectation as well that you won't know the answer to every question. That's okay, but that you will make the effort to follow up and find out answers in the future. And if you do say you're going to follow up, always follow up as promised. Don't just disappear at the end of the presentation without answering the question. Seek out the person if they're not there and say, hey, let's go and find out the answer to your question. But never make up the answer, as I mentioned before. Never make it up. And then finally, listening. So this sounds obvious, but it's really important. When you're listening, repeat back what has been said, because then people know that you've been listening. So if someone asks a question, you can sort of reiterate, you understand. Oh, so I understand this is what you want to know. Or if I'm right, this is your question. And this will help you remember too. Acknowledgement is a great way to increase the confidence of the group so that their comments and questions are taken seriously. Also acknowledge a great question, or I understand your point, or I get where you're coming from. This sends the message that this is a friendly, welcoming environment. Avoid content overload. Make sure that you tailor your content to the story, to the people in the room. If you've got a certain industry, people from a certain industry in a room, use their industry as an example. So if you've got a plumber in the room, use a plumbing business as an example. Have focus, so 3 key points on each slide, and make sure you can remember them without looking at the slide. And pause. So when you first show a slide, pause. This gives yourself time to recall the key points, gives your audience time to look at the slide and then focus on you. This might feel unnatural to you initially, but to the audience, you'll look more composed and confident. Your voice is a powerful tool. So think about how you're going to adapt it depending on the situation you're in. So we need to think about volume. How loud is your voice going to be? Tailor it to the group size. Make sure everyone can hear you. Use it to get attention. So you can raise it, lower it. You could speak quietly mid-sentence to get the room to focus on what you're saying. So actually lowering your volume can make people listen in more carefully. You can increase the volume to make a point. In terms of style, adapt to suit your audience and subject. So think about how this might change depending on the size of your audience or the experience level of your group. Tone. So you want to vary the tone of your voice to make the presentation interesting. Be conscious of your tone. If I speak to you right now in monotone, then it's not going to be very interesting for the audience because I'm just speaking in the same way all the time and you might switch off. So think about how you use your tone to communicate meaning. An inverted tone at the end of a sentence indicates a question. But don't do this all the time because it could get very confusing if you keep changing tone and style and volume. And your pace. So you want a steady speed, but you want to remember to pause and breathe. Don't rush through the content. Deliver your presentation in a calm, well-paced way will make you seem confident and credible, even if you are terrified of presenting. And it can be terrifying presenting. It really can. But people don't know often how terrified you are inside. You can convey a very different demeanor from what you're feeling inside. And one way of doing this is through body language. So your body language comprises of your gesture, your stance, your facial expression. And these are all the more important when you have the eyes of an audience on you. So when you're presenting strong, positive body language, makes people feel confident in their presenter, makes people listen to you, makes you come across as credible. And you can express your emotions and connect with your listeners. Body language is so important when it comes to presenting, even more than what you say often, because people will, they'll know how they're going to connect with you and the type of presenter you are from the way you stand, from the way your face is. So think about the body language you use on a normal day-to-day basis. So think about what your body language conveys. So if I say here, nervous or confident, if I'm like this, you can tell I'm nervous, I'm uncomfortable. If I'm like this and open and smiling and welcoming, I come across more confident. We can often think about negative emotions. Our body language can convey negative emotions without us even saying anything. So most people look down, hunch their shoulders and narrow their stance and cross their arms and wriggle and fidget, maybe play with their hair if they're feeling nervous. Could also come across as untrustworthy. Positive emotions, happy, confidence, honesty. If you even think about these positive emotions and try and adopt them now, if you think about looking happy, conveying happiness, think about what your body does. You open up your body. You don't hide behind your arms. You're confident. You lift your chin. You put your shoulders back. You make eye contact. We want to think about these positive emotions when we're presenting. So even if we are feeling really nervous, we want to be thinking, I'm feeling confident, because even just thinking about those emotions can enable us to start portraying that in our body language. So have a go at some power poses. I can't see you, so have a go. So we've got the Wonder Woman and the performer here. So when I'm talking, pick one of these poses and hold it. Key to a power pose is a good, strong stance, an open, confident trunk, strong, comfortable arms, a slightly raised chin, and your strongest smile. And I can't help but do it while I'm presenting. So power poses work. They're responsible for increased testosterone levels and decreased cortisol levels. They'll make you feel stronger and more confident. Sometimes it's a bit like fake it till you make it. I'm going to feel confident. I'm going to feel powerful. I'm going to feel strong. And then your body and the way you communicate will come across in that way. Next time you've got a stressful situation coming up, give it a go just for a couple of minutes and see if it makes a difference. Hopefully, after you've been doing your power poses right now, you'll feel ready to take on the world. But there are some other practical body language tips you should follow when engaging with customers in groups or in one-to-one presentations. I do power poses before I have a big presentation, just because I feel like it prepares me, it puts me in the zone, it gets me ready for actually presenting. So when you are presenting, think about your stance, especially if you're standing on a stage or in front of people. It doesn't have to be a power pose. You don't have to give your presentation in a power pose. That might be a bit odd. But you want a powerful pose. You want body language that communicates confidence, happiness, and positivity. You want to present with energy, enthusiasm, and excitement. The 3 E's: energy, enthusiasm, and excitement. You want to have movement. You want to gesture naturally. So this means using your hands with purpose and intention. You often see politicians doing this. They have certain hand movements that they will do to emphasize points. When you're not gesturing, keep your hands at your side. And actually, on that note, be really mindful as if you do use your hands to talk a lot, because I do. I'm always using my hands, and I have to be quite conscious, probably done it a lot today, of trying to keep them down when I don't need to use them to help me emphasize a point. And connect with people. So make eye contact. Fix your gaze on one person for a few seconds at a time. Don't stare at them, because again, that would be strange. But fix your gaze, move your gaze to different people in the audience. And pause from time to time so you can create rhythm and break up the delivery into chunks. And think about any bad habits you might have. So do you fidget a lot, or do you say or are there certain quirks that you have that you do a lot that become noticeable? And practice. This is what's going to make it easier for you. practice presenting, record yourself presenting before the event. Just use your phone and then watch it back. And most people hate doing this, but it can be really useful exercise because you can objectively look at it and see where you want to improve, things that you do that you weren't aware of. And you can also see how clear are you, how well can you be understood? Do you overuse any words? Do you use your hands too much like me? So try watching it back without the sound on as well. How does your body move? What do you come across like? Do you look confident? There are two reasons why all great presenters plan exactly what they'll do during their presentation. One, they're going to look professional, confident, and credible. And two, if something goes wrong or someone interrupts them or they forget what comes next, they can revert to the process they have planned and pick up the next step. Even professionals don't try to blag it. Even professionals are practicing. Politicians have clear goals for what they're trying to achieve. They plan precisely what to say and do during a presentation to achieve the maximum connection with their audience and to influence them. Comedians, who I mentioned before, they're not funny because of what they say, it's how they say it. It's their timing and associated gestures. It's their facial expressions. It looks spontaneous, the best looks spontaneous, but their performance will be planned and rehearsed extensively. Magicians, other great presenters, they're not magic. They create illusions, but they've rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, so it looks like magic. So just to recap on some of the areas a presenter should consider, make sure you adapt to your audience, both the content, the structure, the way you present, and how you're presenting and the venue in which you're presenting or online. Think about your voice. Think about the volume, the pace. Consider your body language. That's really important. You can portray confidence even if you're feeling terrified inside. And practice, because practice is what's going to make it much easier for you on the day when the real event comes. Okay, let's see. Any questions? My final question break. So if you do have any, please just pop them in the chat. Let's have a look. So Nasrullah, how to make an elevator pitch deck presentation? Elevator pitch. I'm not sure if I completely get the question. An elevator pitch is a short description of what it is that you want to, not what it is what you want to say. You have a business. It's being able to describe what you do in a really succinct way and the length of time it would take an elevator to get from floor 1 to floor 6 or whatever it is. So a few seconds, can you describe what it is you do or what it is that you want to do or what your message is going to be? So I would say have an elevator pitch for your presentation. This is what the presentation is going to be about. Being able to describe it in one key sentence, a title, as it were. The title for your presentation could be the elevator pitch for your presentation. But if I've misunderstood your question, we've got a minute or so if you want to just clarify that. Sarah, you have to do performing on an hourly basis. You're a primary school teacher. You are a constant presenter. You're here to mix up ways to present to adults in a new training role. Yes, so you have got a different delivery style there when you're presenting to adults or teaching adults in comparison to children. I think the audience that you have at the moment as a primary school teacher may be more demanding than the adults, actually. You might not believe it, but they can be harsh critics, can't they, primary school children? Anything else? What to do if a person forgets? If you forget, if you're standing there and it's like, oh, I've completely forgotten what it is I'm going to say. Things throw us. Take a pause. It's okay. Actually, a really good tip as well is a glass of water. If you just get a glass of water, have a sip of water, that is giving you time. You're picking up the glass, you've got time to think, because a lot of it is, it's not that you've forgotten, it's still there. It's just the nerves, the pressure is there, and it's too much to remember at that moment in time. So just give yourself pause, time to think, and hopefully it'll come back. If not, move on to the next point, which you do remember, and you will pick it up. You will pick it up. It will come back. Okay, thank you for all your questions. Thank you for engaging with this presentation. I really appreciate that. So what are your next steps? So do share with us in the chat what you're going to do. Have you got a presentation to give? Are you going to use some of these tips? Do share any feedback you've got on today's presentation in the chat box. There is a link to our feedback form. We do love to hear feedback on the presentation as well. So now I'll be sharing that link in the chat with you. Don't forget there are these free career certificates available from Google. So these are for job seekers based in the UK. If you're looking to improve your job ready skill set, you can sign up for these free career certificate courses. We've got IT support, project management, data analytics and UX design. So do make use. These are fantastic. These courses really comprehensive and will equip you with the skills that are in demand right now in the job market. So thank you all very much for joining me today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. I will wrap up here as we're out of time. Hope you found that a useful dive into presentations. As I mentioned at the start, if you're interested in more training from Google Digital Garage, there are a few ways you can continue. We are running lots of other webinars in different subjects, so do check out the schedule in the description below. And I know Niall will share the link with you in the chat. If you'd like to carry on learning in your own time, check out the Google Digital Garage website for more online training courses available 24/7. But thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to welcoming you again to another Google Digital Garage training session soon. Have a great day.